Mark, after 17 years with Horizon Tech, your position is eliminated. Please clean out your desk by the end of the day. Those words hit me like a quiet thunderclap. No warnings, no conversations, just cold. Final. My name is Mark Harrison. I'm 55, and for nearly 2 decades, I was the backbone of Horizon Tech's IT systems in Denver, Colorado. But that Monday morning, everything changed. For 17 years, I had been the steady pulse behind Horizon Tech's IT heartbeat. I started when the company was just a handful of employees crammed into a small office downtown. I grew with it, moving through every tech evolution, from clunky servers and dial-up connections to cloud computing and advanced cybersecurity. I was there through every late-night reboot and every emergency fix. The quiet guy no one noticed until something broke, and then suddenly, I was the most important person in the building. I trained every new hire, often staying late without thanks or recognition. 3 CEOs came and went. I stayed. So when Daniel Matthews, the latest CEO, called me into his office one morning, with Vanessa from HR already sitting there, I didn't need him to speak to know what was coming. The air between us had shifted weeks before, subtle changes, exclusions, and a coldness I hadn't expected from a company I gave my life to. I understand, I said simply after Daniel explained. No anger, no protest, just quiet acceptance. There was no point in fighting a battle I knew was already lost. I walked out of the office, my mind calm but my heart heavy. Back at my desk, I packed my things methodically. Family photos, a worn coffee mug for my son, the tiny cactus that somehow survived 17 years under the harsh office lights. I noticed the younger employees glance at me, some with sympathy, most with awkward avoidance. They didn't understand the systems I built or the codes I wrote deep in the company's architecture. They only saw that the old guy was gone. Bethany from marketing stopped by, her face tight with concern. Mark? This is ridiculous. You practically built this place. Her words meant a lot, but I had no energy left for protests. Companies change, I replied quietly. But being blindsided like this, after everything. Her voice rose, drawing unwanted attention in the open workspace. I just smiled faintly. It's fine. Really. It wasn't fine, but I wasn't going to make a scene. I left quietly, knowing my time with Horizon Tech was over, but the story was far from finished. As I walked past Daniel's office, I caught him watching me go. Not with farewell, but with the cold gaze of someone making sure I really left. They didn't realize I had been the most critical person in the building, not because I sought the spotlight, but because I never let anything slip through the cracks. Years ago, at the request of the legal department, I'd set up detailed audit protocols to catch unauthorized access or suspicious activity, an invisible safety net the executives never understood but deeply depended on. I sat in my car outside the 15-story building that had been my world for so long. The security badge I just surrendered had been renewed 16 times. I started the engine, knowing Wednesday was going to be interesting. Behind that glass facade, the company thought it was moving on without me. They had no idea the quiet man in the corner was about to make sure they never forgot his name. My career at Horizon Tech wasn't just a job, it was a commitment. I was there at the beginning when the company was a small startup, struggling to find its footing in Denver's growing tech scene. Back then, IT infrastructure was basic, and every challenge was a chance to build something better. I embraced that challenge with dedication, often losing myself in lines of code and network configurations deep into the night. As the company expanded, so did my responsibilities. I became the go-to person for every system failure, every urgent patch, every security breach. When the cloud migration was announced, many saw it as an exciting leap forward. For me, it was an immense task, a delicate operation that required precision, patience, and a deep understanding of the systems I had nurtured for years. The executives praised the innovation, but they rarely understood the complexity behind it. What they saw there was a sleek interface, a seamless experience. What they didn't see were the countless hours I spent fine-tuning the back end, troubleshooting obscure bugs, or building workarounds for legacy software that the company couldn't yet abandon. Over the years, I mentored countless junior analysts and programmers. I took pride in passing on knowledge, in shaping the next generation of IT professionals who would carry the company forward. I watched them grow, knowing they stood on the foundations I had laid. Despite the many changes at the top, 3 CEOs came and went. I remained a constant. My loyalty was unwavering. I turned down lucrative offers from competitors because Horizon Tech was my home, My wife Andrea joked that the server room was my second family. In many ways, she wasn't far from the truth. Daniel Matthews, the current CEO, arrived 5 years ago, fresh out of business school, full of ideas about digital transformation and efficiency. He approached our department with a new language: resources instead of people, streamlining instead of support. At first, I tried to bring him up to speed on the complex, years-long adaptations we'd made to keep the company's technology stable, but his attention was elsewhere, focused on buzzwords and quick wins. He brought in Jason Phillips, a pricey consultant with a polished resume and a knack for strategic meetings behind closed doors. They huddled in conference rooms, whispering whenever I passed by. I noticed the subtle shifts, the quiet removal of some of my access rights, the sidelinings during project discussions, the omission from critical emails. I could have confronted them, but I chose to observe, to document. I sensed that this was a prelude to something larger, an attempt to edge me out under the guise of modernization. Andrea noticed the change too. One evening, as we sat quietly on our porch, she asked if I was okay. I reassured her it was nothing new, just some changes. But inside, I knew the game had changed. The memo I stumbled upon one day sealed the deal, a company-wide restructuring plan that erased my position from the organizational chart. Suddenly, my years of loyalty and expertise didn't seem to matter. I was invisible. That same day, during a routine security scan, I uncovered the first real evidence of something amiss. Financial software was showing regular transfers to an obscure vendor, Apex Solutions Group, with growing amounts. The company address was just a UPS store, a shell designed to hide something. The payments were authorized through legitimate channels but inflated, 15%, 20% more than expected. The vendor was tied to the CFO's brother-in-law, a subtle siphoning of funds hidden behind layers of bureaucracy and fake invoices. I didn't speak. I copied the records, noted the dates, and watched quietly. The quiet man in the corner often sees the most, precisely because no one expects him to. Those years of building the company's backbone had also given me the patience to wait for the right moment, and that moment was coming. Change at the top of a company always ripples through the ranks, but sometimes those ripples turn into waves, quiet and nearly invisible waves that slowly erode your place until you're left stranded on the shore. That's what happened when Daniel Matthews took over as CEO of Horizon Tech. Daniel was different from the previous leaders. Fresh from an MBA program, he was all about buzzwords, digital transformation, lean operations, efficiency gains. At first, I tried to engage with his vision. I explained the intricacies of the legacy systems and the years of painstaking work that had kept everything running smoothly. But he wasn't interested in the technical details. To him, it was a resource, something to be optimized and streamlined, not a critical department built on knowledge and experience. Soon the changes started subtly. My involvement in strategic meetings began to dwindle. I found myself increasingly excluded from conversations that once demanded my expertise. Emails about new projects, upgrades, and policy changes arrived late or not at all. It was as if I was becoming irrelevant, a relic of an older era in a company that wanted to present a shiny modern facade. Then came Jason Phillips, the consultant with the polished LinkedIn profile and a Harvard pedigree. Jason was brought in to modernize the IT department, which translated to taking control away from those of us who'd built it from the ground up. Daniel and Jason met often behind closed doors, and every time I passed by, their whispered conversations stopped abruptly. The most telling sign came when my access permissions started to be altered. Nothing overt, just small incremental changes that restricted my ability to manage critical systems. It was enough to hamper my work without raising immediate alarms. A quiet sidelining designed to push me out without confrontation. I didn't protest publicly. I knew how this game was played. Instead, I watched and documented. I kept detailed records of changes, meetings I wasn't invited to, and the gradual reassignment of my responsibilities to others. Andrea noticed my growing distraction. One evening on the porch, she asked gently, "Is everything okay at work?" I nodded and took a slow sip of beer, replying, "Sütti. Just changes. Nothing I haven't seen before." But inside I knew this was different. The company had made a decision. It was moving on without me. And not just me. Anyone who knew the system intimately, who could see beneath the surface, was at risk of being pushed aside. I stumbled upon a company memo one afternoon, a detailed restructuring plan that no one had shared with me. The IT department was to be reorganized under Jason Phillips's leadership, and my role was no longer listed. They were erasing my position entirely. It was a silent but definitive end to nearly 2 decades of work. My knowledge, my loyalty, my years of late nights and sacrifices reduced to a name struck from a chart. But what Daniel, Jason, and the rest of the executive team didn't realize was that I wasn't just going to disappear quietly. The quiet man in the corner often sees the most, and I was ready. While the company was busy reshaping the IT department and edging me out, I kept one eye firmly fixed on something more disturbing: anomalies in the financial software. My daily routine of system scans and audits was meticulous. No detail escaped my notice. It was during one of these routine checks that I spotted something off: regular payments to a vendor named Apex Solutions Group. At first glance, Apex Solutions appeared legitimate. Their invoices matched software license renewals the company needed, but the amounts were inflated, sometimes by 15%, sometimes by 20%. The sums weren't huge enough to trigger immediate suspicion, but were significant enough to accumulate into millions over time. Curious and concerned, I dove deeper. The vendor's address led to a UPS store, no real office, no real business presence. Even more troubling, the listed owner was Thomas Wilcox, the CFO's brother-in-law. I cross-checked the payment approvals and saw they followed the proper chain, right up to Brian Wilcox, our CFO. It was a quiet scheme hiding in plain sight, siphoning company funds through inflated invoices and fake vendors. I didn't rush to confront anyone. I copied every record, every email, every approval slip. I watched quietly, knowing that rushing might blow my cover and tip off those involved. Years of experience taught me that patience was as valuable as action. My family knew something was wrong. Andrea noticed my preoccupation, but I reassured her I was fine, just handling some complicated work stuff. The quiet man in the corner often sees the most. Everyone assumes you're disengaged until you make your move. As the payments to Apex grew, so did my resolve. This wasn't just corporate housekeeping, it was theft, abuse of power, and betrayal, and I held the proof. That same day, the memo about the IT restructuring confirmed it all. The company was reorganizing not just to modernize, but to eliminate those who might expose the truth. This financial mystery was the key to everything. I knew that to bring justice, I'd need to connect the dots carefully and present the facts clearly. The road ahead was risky, powerful people were involved, and the stakes were high. But after 17 years of loyalty, I owed it to the company and to myself to uncover the truth. In the chaos of corporate life, the quiet ones often go unnoticed. People assume if you're silent, you're disengaged, but sometimes silence is the most powerful weapon. I became that silent watcher at Horizon Tech. While new management reorganized teams and shifted projects, I continued my work, but with a new purpose. Every unusual email, every strange meeting, every altered access permission was carefully logged. I documented conversations, changes in software controls, and most importantly, financial transactions that seemed out of place. Years earlier, I had designed and implemented secure audit protocols at the request of the legal team. Protocols that could track who accessed what, when, and how. Many executives paid little attention, thinking those were just precautions. But those logs became my shield, my sword. As Daniel Matthews and Jason Phillips pushed forward with their plans, sidelining longtime employees and restructuring the IT department, I observed quietly. They thought they were cutting out the old guard to modernize. They underestimated the knowledge and preparation I had. At home, Andrea noticed my growing focus. She knew when to give me space and when to listen. Her quiet support was invaluable. Sometimes late at night, I'd sit at my desk reviewing system logs, security reports, and copies of financial records, building a comprehensive picture. I created backups of critical data on encrypted drives hidden in secure locations. Company policy forbade removal of data, but years ago, during a security audit, I had been granted permission to maintain off-site backups, an oversight many executives had forgotten. This wasn't just paranoia, it was preparation. I knew that if I were forced out, the company, and those hiding corruption, would want to erase traces of their wrongdoing. I wasn't about to let that happen. In meetings, I became less visible, but more focused. I spent time mentoring younger team members, ensuring they understood the systems deeply enough to survive without me. I passed on knowledge quietly, preparing my team for what might come. When Jason Phillips's consulting firm was hired through unusual channels, bypassing normal procurement, I took note. His role was not just about efficiency, but about eliminating anyone who could uncover the truth. The payments to Apex Solutions Group were just one part of a larger pattern. I suspected others were involved. People who stood to gain by pushing out experienced employees and covering up financial misconduct. The quiet man in the corner sees everything, not because he is ignored, but because others reveal their secrets in his presence. Thinking no one is paying attention, I never intended to cause upheaval. My goal was simple: protect the integrity of the company I had helped build, and expose the corruption that threatened it. So I kept watching, kept documenting, and waited for the right moment to act. The morning after my dismissal, I sat alone in my home office. The silence was overwhelming. No alarm clock, no commute, just the weight of what had happened settling around me. I wasn't angry, nor was I defeated. Instead, I was focused, calculating the next steps. Years of experience had prepared me for this moment, even if I hadn't expected it to arrive so abruptly. Andrea brought me coffee and placed it beside me without a word. After nearly 2 decades of marriage, she knew when I needed space and when to stand by. I nodded my thanks, my mind already racing through the data, the records, the evidence I'd meticulously gathered. This wasn't just about me losing my job. It was about something bigger: the integrity of the company I had helped build. I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a flash drive, one of several I kept for emergencies. Company policy forbade the removal of sensitive data, but years ago, when the legal department requested a secure audit system, I had insisted on maintaining off-site backups. They'd signed off on it, then promptly forgotten. This drive contained everything: internal emails, meeting minutes, financial records, and most importantly, the documentation of suspicious payments to Apex Solutions Group. I began compiling a concise report, outlining the inflated payments, the connection to the CFO's brother-in-law, and the chain of approvals that implicated top executives. The evidence was damning, yet presented logically and objectively. I wanted to be irrefutable. With the report ready, I drafted an email to Daniel Matthews, the CEO, titled, "Financial Irregularities, Urgent Review Needed." I included a summary of the findings, just enough to grab attention, but not so much as to reveal everything. I left out the direct connection to the family member. That would come later. At exactly 9:15 a.m., I clicked send. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was Daniel. I let the call go to voicemail. His message was terse. "Mark, we need to discuss your email immediately. Call me back." I didn't respond. Instead, I packed my laptop and headed to a nearby cafe, setting up a secure connection away from prying eyes. Over the next hour, I monitored emails and calls, but stayed silent, waiting for the storm to break. At 10:30, I received a formal email from Vanessa in HR, accusing me of violating my separation agreement by contacting current employees and reminding me of confidentiality obligations. A thinly veiled threat, but one I was prepared for. I hadn't signed any such agreement. They were scrambling to intimidate me. By noon, I was at the bank, accessing my safe deposit box, where I stored older backups and critical documents. I reviewed records showing expanded access to financial systems by Brian Wilcox, the CFO, starting 18 months prior, exactly when the Apex payments began. Cross-referencing dates and figures, the pattern was undeniable. That afternoon, my phone rang. Brian Wilcox. His voice was calm, measured. He invited me to meet and clear up misunderstandings. I declined. If anything, I was just getting started. I continued refining my report and preparing for what was next. The quiet man in the corner had made his first move, and the company was already feeling the tremors. The days following my email were a whirlwind of tension and subtle intimidation. It quickly became clear that Daniel Matthews, Brian Wilcox, and Jason Phillips weren't going to back down quietly. Instead, they tried to isolate me, to pressure me into silence. But I was determined to stand firm. Vanessa from HR sent a formal letter warning me that any further contact with current employees would violate my separation agreement and could lead to legal action. It was a thinly veiled attempt to shut me up and keep the company's secrets buried. But I hadn't signed any such agreement, and I knew my rights. I responded calmly through my attorney, making it clear that I was prepared to cooperate fully, but only within legal boundaries. Emails and phone calls flooded in, some friendly, others cold and threatening. Jason Phillips himself contacted me, urging me to reconsider my actions and warning that things could get messy. It was clear they were desperate. The consultant who was supposed to modernize the IT department was now part of a cover-up effort. Despite the pressure, I kept my focus. I wasn't alone. My former colleagues, especially the younger analysts I had mentored, showed concern, but wisely kept their distance. Steven, one of the junior developers, texted me often, updating me on internal chaos and expressing his support. I advised him to stay out of the crossfire, knowing that this battle was mine to fight. At home, Andrea was my rock. She listened without interruption, providing the quiet strength I needed. We talked late into the night about strategy, risks, peace, and the path forward. She reminded me why I had started this journey, to protect the company's integrity and ensure accountability. Meanwhile, the company was starting to crack. Rumors spread among staff about financial irregularities, and the investigation quietly underway. Board members were summoned for emergency meetings, and whispers of executive suspensions began to surface. My evidence was solid: detailed logs, audit trails, emails, and the connections linking inflated payments to family members of senior executives. The trail was undeniable, but those implicated wielded power and influence, and they weren't going down without a fight. One afternoon, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was Brian Wilcox. His voice was calm but strained as he asked for a meeting. I declined politely, unwilling to engage in any backroom deals. I wanted transparency and justice, not negotiations in the shadows. The pressure only increased after that. Vanessa's emails became more frequent, warnings more severe. Jason Phillips increased his presence, coordinating with legal and HR to monitor and disrupt my communications. Yet through it all, I remained steady. I'd faced corporate politics before, but this was different. This was personal. I spent long hours reviewing data, double-checking my facts, and preparing for the day I would present everything to the board. I knew that exposing corruption was a high-stakes game, and the fallout could be messy, but I was ready. Because sometimes, standing firm isn't about confrontation. It's about unwavering resolve and meticulous preparation. With the evidence compiled and the mounting pressure from the executives, it was clear the next step was to bring everything to the board of directors. This wasn't a decision I took lightly. After 17 years with Horizon Tech, this confrontation wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. I reached out to Robert Green, a board member I'd worked with years ago during a security audit. Despite semi-retirement, he remained sharp and well-respected, known for asking the hard questions others avoided. When I contacted him, I didn't mince words. "Robert," I said, "there's serious financial misconduct happening. I have the proof, and it implicates senior executives. The company's future depends on immediate action." He agreed to meet me at a quiet park near headquarters, a place where we could talk openly without risk of eavesdropping. I handed him a sealed envelope containing my comprehensive report. Spreadsheets outlining the inflated payments, cross-referenced dates, vendor registrations linked to family members, and emails showing complicity among top executives. Robert studied the documents carefully, then looked up with a grave expression. "If this checks out, there will be serious consequences. The board has an emergency meeting scheduled tomorrow. They'll want your full cooperation." The night before the meeting, Andrea and I reviewed everything one more time. We discussed potential outcomes, including the worst-case scenarios. But I felt ready. After all, I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for the company's integrity and the countless employees who depended on it. The next morning, I sat in the boardroom, surrounded by executives and board members. The air was tense, the weight of impending decisions palpable. Robert opened the discussion by presenting my report. As the details emerged, the inflated invoices, the bogus vendors, the direct involvement of the CFO and CEO, the room shifted from disbelief to shock. Questions flew, accusations were whispered, denials, thin and shaky, followed, but the evidence was overwhelming. The quiet man in the corner had spoken, and this time, the company couldn't ignore him. I remained composed, answering questions factually, never raising my voice, but making it clear that I had nothing to hide. This was more than a personal victory, it was a reckoning for Horizon Tech. By the end of the meeting, several executives were placed on administrative leave, pending investigation. The board pledged transparency and swift action to restore trust and stability. Walking out of that room, I felt a mix of relief and determination. The battle wasn't over, but a critical victory had been won. Andrea was waiting outside with a reassuring smile. Together, we faced what came next, knowing that integrity and truth had brought us this far and would carry us further. The aftermath of the board meeting unfolded quickly and with dramatic intensity. The evidence I had presented set off a chain reaction within Horizon Tech's executive ranks and across the company as a whole. The board wasted no time placing Daniel Matthews, Brian Wilcox, and several other implicated executives on immediate administrative leave pending a full investigation. For the first time, the company's leadership was being held accountable. News of the suspensions leaked to the staff and then the public, triggering a wave of uncertainty and anxiety. Rumors flew through the halls as employees speculated on what would come next. Whispers of financial misconduct, mismanagement, and internal betrayal echoed through every department. Those who had once seemed untouchable now faced scrutiny and doubt. The company's stock price dipped sharply as investors reacted to the crisis. Market analysts began questioning Horizon Tech's stability, the integrity of its leadership, and the future of its core products. Headlines appeared overnight: Horizon Tech in turmoil, executive corruption rocks growing tech firm, and financial scandal sends shockwaves. But while the crisis unfolded, my former colleagues, especially the younger IT professionals I had mentored, stood resilient. Several reached out with messages of gratitude and encouragement, affirming that the systems we had built and maintained were still operational, and that the company's future could be salvaged with the right leadership. Meanwhile, forensic accountants descended on the company, meticulously combing through financial records to trace the full extent of the embezzlement. Early estimates suggested nearly $4.5 million had been diverted over several years, a significant blow, but one that could be recovered. Jason Phillips claimed ignorance, portraying himself as an innocent consultant caught in the middle. However, the board's investigation revealed his deep involvement in orchestrating the restructuring that sidelined experienced staff and conveniently masked the financial irregularities. His role as a gatekeeper, rather than a reformer, became clear. As the investigation progressed, Horizon Tech's board appointed an interim leadership team, tasked with stabilizing operations and restoring confidence. Discussions began about creating new oversight roles, including a chief information security officer position, one that would report directly to the board and have the authority to prevent future abuses. Throughout this turmoil, I maintained a low profile, focused on my principles rather than headlines. I was neither seeking revenge nor public acclaim. Instead, I wanted justice for the company I had devoted my career to, and transparency for its employees and stakeholders. Amid the chaos, offers from competitors and industry contacts began to arrive, positions with significant responsibilities and competitive compensation. But I remained patient. My priority was ensuring that the damage was contained and that Horizon Tech could rebuild on a foundation of integrity. Andrea continued to be my pillar of strength. Together, we navigated the uncertain days, knowing that while the road ahead would be challenging, truth had set the wheels in motion for lasting change. The scandal was a wake-up call, not just for Horizon Tech, but for the industry at large. A reminder of the importance of vigilance, ethics, and the quiet dedication of those who build and protect the systems others take for granted. Months after the storm, Horizon Tech began to heal. The board's swift action and commitment to transparency laid the groundwork for a new era, one where accountability was paramount and ethical leadership was non-negotiable. In the aftermath, I was offered the newly created position of Chief Information Security Officer, reporting directly to the board. This role gave me the authority and resources to oversee all IT security and audit processes, ensuring that nothing like the previous corruption could take root again. It was a vote of confidence, not only in my skills, but in the importance of integrity. Walking back into the building months later, I was greeted with a mix of surprise, respect, and relief. Employees who had once been uncertain now saw a familiar face they trusted. The younger analysts I had mentored were now thriving under renewed leadership, and together we began the process of rebuilding systems and restoring morale. Brian Wilcox had pled guilty to multiple charges related to embezzlement and faced legal consequences. Daniel Matthews' fate remained in the hands of investigators, while Jason Phillips was being pursued for his role in the scandal. The money was largely recovered, minimizing financial damage and helping to stabilize the company's position in the market. I promoted Stephen, a promising junior analyst, to lead day-to-day operations in IT. It was vital to build a strong team committed to transparency and excellence, with opportunities for growth and mentorship, principles I held dear. At home, Andrea and I reflected often on the journey. The anger that had fueled me in the immediate aftermath had softened into a quiet satisfaction. It wasn't about revenge, it was about completion, a restoration of what was right. My message to the industry was clear. No matter how quiet or overlooked you may feel, your knowledge, your integrity, and your perseverance matter. Sometimes the quietest voices carry the greatest power. With every passing day, Horizon Tech regained stability. The stock rebounded and client confidence returned. The lessons learned became part of the company's culture, emphasizing vigilance, ethics, and respect for those who build the foundation. I often think about the bridges we build in life and work. Some collapse under the weight of greed and neglect. Others, when repaired with care and conviction, become stronger than ever before. Sitting in my corner office overlooking the city skyline, I feel proud, not just for what I've accomplished, but for the future we are creating. The company that once tried to discard me is now a beacon of integrity, innovation, and resilience. And as Andrea reminds me, the most important victories are those that bring peace, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who depends on the systems we protect.